Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Higher Studies Talk by CSEA. So we have a great panel here who are all IITG graduates going on to pursue their higher studies. They'll all be introducing themselves now.
Hi everyone, I'm Ameya. I'm an incoming PhD student at MIT. I graduated 2 years ago from IITG, and since then I've been a predoctoral researcher at Google Research India.
Hello everyone, I'm Shaurya. I also graduated in 2020. So I interned at DShaw and I worked there for the past 2 years, and now I'll be attending the Masters of Computer Science program at University of India, Alabama.
Hi everyone, I'm Kousik and I'm a 2022 graduate from PSC, and I'm admitted to CMU MSML program, and I'll be attending that this fall.
Hey everyone, I'm Milind. I graduated this year. I'll be joining the PhD program at the University of Michigan this fall.
Hi, I'm Harsh, and I graduated from IITG in 2022. And I will be joining University of California, San Diego for Masters in CS this fall.
I'll start. So this is basically today's agenda of what we'll be covering, and moving on to the first topic, which is why MS or PhD. These are a few reasons why people usually pursue higher studies. I'll explain about masters, and Ameya will continue with PhD. So the first reason is knowledge. So if you feel like you want to study further, if you feel like you want to study further in a particular field, you may pursue masters, and so your BTech would probably be like a more breadth-based degree, and a master's will specialize in a particular topic. So that is one reason you can pursue a master's. Uh, Second reason is profile building. So a master's would be a valuable addition to your profile, and you would likely have better job prospects after a master's. So that is another reason. Third is the US job market. So um, going directly for work in the US is pretty difficult, and it's almost unheard of. So this is one reason why people go through a master's degree. So if you pursue a master's in US, you are eligible to work there for a few years, and then you can obtain a H-1B visa to work there permanently. So this is one reason. And the next reason is research roles. So some companies have roles which are specific to masters and PhD students. So to be eligible for this, you would need a master's degree. So the next reason is switching majors. So for people from non CS branches, you may like pursue a master's degree to uh, go work in a software development company or such. So this is not the only way to do this, but this is one reason people pursue masters. And the final reason is like you feel you're stagnant at your work and you're not improving, so you may pursue a master's to maybe get a better job or something. So now Ameya will explain about PhD.
Hi everyone. I think the main reason for pursuing a PhD is, you want to become the expert in something. When I say the expert, this is somebody who is known across the world for like being the person to go to. And I think many people who do graduate from top PhD programs actually do become, this expert. Like they're like actively sought by companies, or they start their own startups which do like revolutionary work. And I think the PhD is probably the easiest path to actually becoming the expert in something, because you are surrounded by extremely smart and driven people, and you get to work with them. You get to do cutting edge research. Over 5 years, if you spend enough time on your research, you will eventually become really good at it.
So some cons of pursuing a master's degree would be that it's expensive. So it costs significantly more than what it costs here, or especially in the US, higher education is expensive, and master's degrees usually don't have funding. Some of them have. So this is one disadvantage. And the third is like opportunity cost. So if you intend to pursue masters to like and then go for work, some companies do value experience more than your education. So you would be missing out on those 1-2 years of experience. And finally, a master's degree, though it has some specialization, it still does not go very deep. And if you really want to go deep in a particular field, a PhD would be a better option for you. So
yeah, I think the opportunity cost also transfers to a PhD even more so, because it's not 2 years, it's like more than 5 years often. Yeah, you don't get paid very well in grad school. It's enough to live, but probably not enough to save a lot. Like, for example, you would probably earn at the top schools like 1/3 of how much you would get as like a starting level software engineering, and there's no like concept of like promotions. Like, your pay is not performance dependent. Probably the like I would say one issue with how PhD programs are structured today is that your experience is extremely dependent on your advisor. The kind of feedback that you get, the kind of research that you will do is all dependent on your advisor and the lab that you will join. So it's extremely important to choose your lab very carefully, because this is like a life-changing decision.
Hi, right now I would like to talk about the application timeline for applying to various higher education programs, master's and PhD programs. The first thing that I would like to mention is that application deadlines generally start during the first week of December. You will find a few deadlines during the first week of December for the programs that you are interested in. And then you will find some during the middle of December, around the 15th of December. And some will go on into January, from like the beginning of January until the mid of January. So this is the duration in which you find most deadlines, from the beginning of December to, I'd say, mid-January. Now, there are a few exceptions here and there, but this is where most of the deadlines lie. So you need to finish your, you need to have your application materials ready before the application deadlines start. And we have a few recommendations for that. The first recommendation is to finish the first draft of your SOP at least a month before the application deadline start. So here's the thing. We have a few reasons for that. So the first reason is that you will need to get your statement of purpose reviewed by your seniors and your peers. And you will need to make sure that your SOP makes a compelling case for you to be a good fit for the programs that you are applying to. So that is why, and one more reason is that you will need to fine tune your SOP for each of the programs that you are going to apply to. And you will need time to research each of the programs, the intricacies of each of the programs, and incorporate them into your SOP. So that is why you need to have the first draft of your SOP ready at least a month before the application deadline start. The second recommendation is to contact professors for LORs at least a few months before the application deadline start. The reason for this is that, this is quite obvious actually. So first of all, if the professors refuse, you will have time to make backup arrangements. And second of all, if you apply early, the likelihood of a professor agreeing to provide you an LOR is higher, because the later you get, the professor might already have a bunch of students that they have agreed to give LORs to. So if you are very late, they might not agree to give you LORs. So that is why it is important to contact the professors early. The third thing is to finish your testing requirements, ideally before September, or at least during the first week of September. The reason is that you will get busy with other stuff later. So you'll get busy with your semester, obviously, and then you'll get busy with your LORs, SOPs, researching the different programs and stuff like that. And in case you mess up your testing requirements, for example, if you get a TOEFL score below the cutoff, or if you mess up your GRE, then you will need time for a second attempt. And between two attempts of the GRE, you have to wait like 21 days. And there's something for the TOEFL too, as far as I remember. So yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the application process. So here's the thing. First of all, how many programs should you apply to? Now, I'm talking about, here's the thing. The number of programs that you want to apply to should depend on your budget and your preference for higher studies over other options. So here's the thing. If you are fine with pursuing an industry job for 1 or 2 years, and if you want to go for higher studies later on, then you might want to apply for a few programs right now, because like if you don't get into these programs, if, like, for example, it might be fine for you to apply into only the ambitious programs, and because it might be fine for you to pursue an industry option in case you don't get in. But if your only option is to pursue higher studies, then you might want to choose a large number of programs to apply to. Now, it also depends on your budget, because here's the thing, it costs around 8,000 rupees per university. Like, this is for the application, by the way. So it costs around 8,000 rupees per university per application. So it costs a lot of money for each application. So, and it might eat into your budget. So you might want to choose a number of universities according to that. You can apply for financial waivers, but many of these financial waivers aren't available for international students. Okay. Now, once you have chosen a set of universities, you can kind of we'll come to how you're going to choose a set of universities later. But once you have chosen a set of universities, for example, let's say you have chosen 10 universities, you can split the shortlist into a few categories: ambitious, moderate, and safety. The ambitious universities are the ones that that you are unlikely to get into. So if there's like a 10% or a less chance of you getting into that university based on your profile, then you might write that into the ambitious category. If there's a decent chance for you to get into a university, then you might categorize that as moderate. And if it's very likely for you to get into that university, but you don't want to go there, but it's just for kind of a backup, then you might want to categorize that as safety. So you might want to choose like 1 or 2 safety schools for you in case you like want to desperately pursue higher studies, and if you don't want to pursue any other options like an industrial career. If you are fine with an industrial career for 1 or 2 years, then you can skip the safety option. The exact number of universities that you want to apply it to kind of depend on your profile, your preference for higher studies, and how much money you have for your budget for applying to these universities. So can you move on to the next slide? Actually, for the next slide, I would like to share my screen, I guess. Oh, shit. Okay, just a second. Okay, here we go. So can you see my screen?
Oh yeah, the screen is visible.
Okay, so you can see the slides, right? Hello? I can't hear anyone. Can anybody say that the screen is visible?
Yes, slides are visible.
Okay, cool. So, so how do you shortlist universities for a master's announcement? For a PhD, we're going to come to later. But for a master's, how do you shortlist universities? The starting point for me and many other people is university rankings. So we have a few university rankings that we can go by. and these are for the for computer science only, for the field of computer science. So the first one is CS rankings, and this is based on the research outputs of the various universities. So it basically ranks universities based on the research outputs of each of them, and I think it's real time or something. And you can also kind of filter them based on the specializations that you want to pursue. For example, if you want to pursue computer systems, then you might only want to switch on computer systems, and you will see the rankings based on computer systems. The link is in the slide, and you will get the slides later. Similarly, you can do the same for artificial intelligence. You can turn off systems and turn on artificial intelligence, and you'll have the rankings based on artificial intelligence and the other fields that they're covering. So this is a ranking based on the research outputs of the various universities. The second ranking is based on various ranking indicators. This is the QS ranking. You might be familiar with this because it's quite famous. So it ranks universities. By the way, this is just for computer science. So it ranks universities based on various ranking indicators, and the indicators are like the research output, the academic reputation, employer reputation, and you might, like, if you are just concerned with employer reputation, then you can filter based on that. Now, of course, they have their own measuring methodology, so it might not be accurate, but yeah, it is at least measured. So the second one is QS. The third one is US News. It is another one that is quite popular. So it ranks universities for computer science, and you can choose the different specializations that you want to pursue. For example, if you want to pursue computer systems, then you can see the rankings according to computer systems. So based on these rankings, you can kind of shortlist, I guess, the top 20 or 30 universities, and then you might want to filter out many of these universities based on other things. So what else do you want to consider? So once you have come up with this shortlist, what filter should you apply? First of all, many of these universities might not even have a master's program. So here's the thing: not every university, offers a master's program. Some of them only offer PhD programs, and some of them only offer some of them offer master's program, but they might not be the master's program that you would want. For example, Harvard only offers a master's in computational sciences, but it doesn't offer a MS in computer science. So you might want to rule out universities based on the programs that they offer. So you will have to look into which programs these universities offer, and you will need to see which programs you are interested in based on those programs. So once that is done, I would like to give another example. So for example, if you are interested in data science, then you might only look into universities that offer a specialization in data science or a master's in data science. Okay. So once that is done, you want to go into once you have applied the first filter, you want to go into the program structure. You might want to go into the intricacies of each of the programs and see which specializations they offer and the curriculum of each of the programs. So for example, if you're interested in computer hardware or computer architecture, and a particular university doesn't offer that specialization or courses in that field, you can rule that university off. Similarly, you might want to look into, whether that university is actually good at that is well known for that specialization, and you can research that based on its general reputation and talking to alumni and stuff like that. So the first step is to kind of shortlist based on university rankings, a large number of universities. And then you can filter a few universities out based on whether they offer the program that you want to pursue. And then you can filter universities out based on the program structure and curriculum, whether they offer the courses that you want and the specializations that you want. The next thing is funding. So the thing is, like Kousik mentioned, that master's programs are very expensive, but some of the programs offer funding. So if funding is an issue for you and you don't want to take a loan, then you might only want to consider the universities that offer good funding opportunities. So some of the master's programs are fully funded, just like PhD programs. So you might want to look into those, but those are highly selective. For example, Cornell's program is highly selective. And many other programs actually offer TA-ship and RA-ship opportunities that, becoming a teaching assistant or ATA, becoming a research assistant and stuff like that, that can help you that can make a significant difference in your funding. But you want to look into the chances of you receiving a TA-ship and RA-ship opportunity. And for that, you should talk to alumni of these different universities. So that is what I did for my universities. Another factor is research and job opportunities. So, many universities kind of offer their own statistics based on, so first I'd like to talk about the job opportunities. So this is basically how likely it is for you to find a job or a good job after graduating. So many universities kind of offer their own statistics of, I guess like placements. And basically, it's not placements, but whatever. Okay, so many universities kind of offer statistics based on where the students went. And based on those statistics, you can select which universities you want to, you want to shortlist. And where those jobs were, if you want to work in particular fields, how was the career prospect in that field and so on. The other thing is that if you want to pursue research during your studies, then you want to look into how easy it is to get research opportunities at a particular university. How easy it is for professors to agree to taking master students under them. So yeah, you might want to look into that too. And the next factor is location. So I've heard that location does affect job opportunities. Locations with a significant number of startups or a significant number of tech companies might be a good option. Or you might not like the weather of certain locations, so you might also want to consider that. So yeah, that is it from my side. If Kousik wants to add anything, he can.
No, Ameya can go on with the PhD.
Oh, I think the slides are...
Yeah, give me a second. I'll share the slides.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, as I was mentioning, your PhD experience is heavily dominated by your advisor. So I put this as the first. So like this is probably the most important factor to consider. And when I talk about your advisor, like I'm not just talking about like their research output and like how much are they publishing. All these are important factors for sure, but most importantly is like, are they a good human, right? Like this is somebody you are going to be working with, somebody who has so much control over your career for the next 5 years, 5-6 years, and even after that, like your advisor is going to connect you to other people. You are going to be permanently associated with your advisor for the rest of your life, right? You're going to be known as XYZ student. So you want to be sure that this is somebody that you want to be associated with, and this is somebody you can work with. I think the best way to kind of understand what the advisor is like to talk to their students, talk to there are like a lot of advisors, if they don't have like very large labs already, you can talk to other professors about them, like like news spreads really fast, like if something is wrong or something is people like are not so if like there's a lot of issues that happen in academia, right? Like we're all familiar with this. So yeah, definitely talk to the students, talk to their colleagues, try to figure out like who is your advisor, like is this somebody that I want to be with. Funding for a PhD is really important. Generally at the top schools, I think it is pretty standard. Like you kind of get like a bit more depending on like the cost of living in the state. Generally, I mean, it's not much. It's enough to live by, like no doubt. Like you won't be able to save a lot though. You can also apply for fellowships, but this doesn't mean that this will be added on to your. So it's not like if you win like a $10,000, like $100,000 scholarship, like a fellowship, you will not get 100,000 every year. In fact, what happens is it goes to your department, and the department stops paying for your education. So you don't actually really get that money in hand. Why do people apply for fellowships? Is because these are pretty prestigious. Like it helps when you want to graduate and you're showing that, okay, I want like a Google PhD fellowship. That's a pretty big thing. Yeah, and it also gives you freedom to be not dependent to your advisor's funding. So what this means is that generally when you join a PhD program, you are funded by your advisor. So your advisor is putting money to kind of, allow you to work and do your research. But then you have to kind of, in some sense, work on something related to what the advisor is doing. But if you have like a fellowship, then you kind of do not have to do this. You're coming with your own money in some sense. And that gives you a bit of freedom to kind of explore at least maybe the first 2-3 years. The third point, is something I think people do not think about too much, but I think some PhD students, they kind of forget about it. You will have to TA for some part of your course. That's kind of expected. Every PhD program is expected to create professors, right? And a key role of a professorship is to teach students, teach undergrads, teach grads. And so you will have to TA for some part of your course, but the amount differs very significantly. Like, it also depends heavily on your funding. Like, suppose your advisor doesn't have enough spots for like an RA, like they already have like enough RA ships, they can only give out TA ships, then you might have to TA for like maybe like 3-4 semesters even. It's a factor to think about. Like, some people actually enjoy teaching. I think it's something that we should enjoy, but it can also get into obstruct like your research progress as well. Location, I mentioned location because this is a place where you're going to be living for the next 5 years. I think generally you can like live where all these universities are made in they are built in places where you can actually live. But like some people don't like winter a lot. Like, it can snow. It's probably very very different from life in India. So it's just something to consider when you're making a decision. Okay. I'm going to talk about like research experience in the context of PhD applications. This is probably the most important factor. And it's actually not so much the experience, but it's more so the research potential. So what this means is are you potentially a very good researcher? Like, do you have the potential to grow into a very good researcher? And what this means is that you don't actually need publications like that are published during the process. It obviously helps a lot, but it's not like a hard requirement, because your LORs can also talk about your potential as well, right? Like, your LORs are coming from people who are researchers, and they can talk about, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, are you of the caliber that these admissions committees are looking for? And the experience is kind of, it shows that you're ready for graduate school, right? Like, the PhD experience is almost all about research. And the fact that you have done some research before, it shows that you are actually capable of continuing to do so for the next 5 years.
Okay, so I'll carry on about the LORs. So yeah, so LORs is basically one of the most important parts of any application. So one of the reasons why I feel this way is that most of the part of the application, apart from LORs, is coming from us. Like, the application, we are filling it, the SOPs, we are writing it, and we can write we should not write anything in it, but we can post there and say we can add some projects which we hadn't contributed that much, but we are just adding it. But this LOR is something which is kind of not coming from you. So this is something which you do not have control on, and it affects your application so like as Ameya was mentioning, for PhDs and for research-based programs like research-based master's programs, where the advisors need to know your research potential. The publications and all are a good indicator, but again, say in undergrads, when you have in undergrads, not many students have the publication and all. So LORs is something which kind of tells the prospective professors that okay, this guy has the ability to kind of grind and research and all. So basically, most of the applications need 3 LORs, and the potential sources of LORs are these 3: the profs with which you have worked with. So these can be profs who you do research interns under, or the profs like who you do your BTP under, or say some course profs, or some other profs in your department which you just do projects for, like part-time research projects, etc. Second, they can be course instructors also, like if you have taken some course under them, and if like need be that you need just, yeah, you have to choose a professor and you do not have someone that you have worked with, you can go to course instructors. But the problem with the course instructor is that like if say he has taught you a course and you are one of the 50 students and you haven't done a project under him, he'll not have many things to add for you as a person. Like he can maybe say that okay, he took a course and he was a good student, and so he can have a template-ish kind of LOR. But yeah, again, this is one of the things. And third is managers or skip managers at work. So basically these are the main three sources. And what now the point is, you have to choose, say from these three you have say 5 people to select 3 from. So what are the things to be kept in mind? First and foremost is it is best if the recommender knows you personally. And by personally I mean if you have, like if it is a professor, like you have worked with him for a semester research project, for a PTP, or in under research interns in different colleges, or say if he's a manager and you have worked for past 2 years with him and all. So why this helps is because they can be candid in their LORs and they can write personal experiences and anecdotes. So that kind of gives the reader of the LOR some sense that okay, this is kind of a LOR which is more in weight than the template LORs kind of thing. Yeah. Second is the position of the recommender. So you can also factor in the point, say you have done research under some influential person, and obviously he directly under him, and he can write an LOR for you, or say someone who works in the department where you are applying, or knows someone in the department. So these things can help. And third and pretty major point I think is what program you are applying to. So say if we talk just about the CS programs for now, those can also be of the two types, like PhD or the research-based master CS. And on the other end, we have professional CS programs also, like University of Washington has it, University of Wisconsin has it. So for these professional, for example, for these professional programs, if you have a dilemma between whether I take it from a manager or say my BTV professor, then you can tend to go with the manager, because professional programs kind of like experience, or they value experience, if I can term it like this. But for the research based courses like PhD and research based masters, many a times in the requirements you'll see that they mention that they want the recommenders to write about your academic caliber. Now obviously if you are working as a software developer, your manager might write about okay, he's a good team player, he's a good engineer, but academic potential is something which it is tough for your managers to write. So in that cases you might tend to go with the professors. But again, this varies from case to case. Say you are going for MS in ML, so and you are working in Google ML, and so your manager is also an engineer in ML, so maybe that time his LOR is better. So yeah, so to summarize, the point is that you have it depends on case to case, and you have to kind of keep these 3 things in mind and decide whom to contact. And yeah, the ask well in advance point, Harsh already mentioned this, that you have to give your recommenders at least sorry 1.5 months time, so that say if they say that they are busy with some deadlines or they deny, you have time to go to other options. And yeah, the link to the LOR. So the process here is that say you have contacted these 3 professors or like 3 persons and they have agreed. So while filling up the application form, you have to fill in their details in each of the form. And like once you do it, the colleges, like their systems, mail professors to kind of submit or upload an LOR. And almost all forms have some kind of questions also. Most of them are objective type, like how do you rate the candidate on this. Some are subjective also. So yeah, obvious, but all these things are filled by the recommenders. So yeah, this is, if anybody wants to add.
Yeah, I would say, just wanted to add on like LORs, like they are extremely important. It is possible to be admitted even just on the basis of your LORs, but yeah, I mean, those LORs have to be very, very strong, and from people the admissions committee know. In some sense, like those people must have already sent like a lot of students before. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, there's many ways to grad school, right? Like, and like a lot of people may not have everything, but you need like one really good strength, I would say, like in your application. That helps a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to the statement of purpose. So this is another very important part of your application. So this is basically a document or 2 page, usually less than at max 2 pages, document of 2 pages, which convey to the application committee why you are a good fit for the program, and it should also convey your experiences and basically prove to them that you're a good candidate. So, firstly, there's no right way to do this. There's a lot of different ways to write SOPs, and like any of them could work. So, yeah, and secondly, this is not something you can do in a very short period of time. This takes a long period. So I started writing my SOP like in October, mid-October, and you usually go through multiple iterations before you reach your final SOP. So I went through some 8, 9 iterations. You get it reviewed from a lot of people, from seniors and friends, and each of them would have some advice, and many of them could be like contradicting. So you need to choose what you think is best and then change your SOP according to it. So yeah, you should start this like well in advance, and yeah, take feedback from a lot of people. So some pointers to what your SOP should have, like the first is that it should be specific. So it should be specific to your program, and you basically need to show your fit into the program, and you show, you don't tell. So you should be like telling about your achievements and your projects, and basically prove why you're a good candidate. The second is that it should be simple. So the committee would be reading a lot of SOPs every day, and in total it'll be like a few thousand. So don't make it complicated. You should make it simple and easy to follow. You should not like embellish it with like flowery language, and use simple words, and stick to the point. So the third is that it should be structured. You can't uh, write randomly. You should have paragraphs. Like I'll come to one particular structure that works, but again, there could be a lot of different structures, and any of them could work. But there should be some structure. So the fourth point is that it should be relevant to your program. So whatever you write, all your experiences, all your achievement, all your projects, publications, should be relevant to the program you're applying to. If you're applying to ML program, you should show that you are good in ML through your projects and publications. And it usually doesn't make sense to add random stuff in it. The fifth is that it should be connected. So all your paragraphs should form a story together, and they should basically show how your experiences and achievements make you a good candidate for this particular program. So you need to connect that somehow, and so next slide, please. So yeah, so since there's no particular way you can write an SOP, I'll tell you a few mistakes that you should avoid. So few of them are like the first is that a lot of people do this, that they basically try to convince the committee that they're interested in this field from a very young age, and this doesn't work. You should probably not do this, and you should try try to write something unique and why you're interested in the program rather than doing this. The second is autobiographies. So you should not write your SOP like on your life, like you did this, you won this, and you should attempt to connect it to the program, like show how what you did is relevant to the work you will be doing in your program. And the third is that you should not use very complicated language. And finally, your SOP should be uh, so you will usually make a first like a draft of your SOP, and you need to modify that to each program you're applying to. So you should go through the program's like website, your curriculum, and your profs, and you should take relevant stuff and put it in your SOP. So, for example, the last paragraph usually is why you want to apply to this program, and you should pick a few profs that, even for your master's program, you should pick up a few profs that are relevant to your interests, and you should attempt to connect your work to them and show that this is why I want to attend this program. And yeah, so moving on to the next slide, so I'll discuss one possible structure that you can use for your SOP. So here, the first thing you should write is about you, and your first paragraph should basically stand out. It should convey all the relevant information to make a partial decision. So you should mention who you are, what your goals are, why you want to join this program. All of this condensed to one paragraph, and then moving on, you can explain about your previous experiences and your like internships, your research projects, your achievements and stuff. So this will basically be the autobiography part of your SOP. And the third thing should be your research interest. So for your SOP, um, you should decide on one particular field that you want to specialize in. So even if you're applying for a master's in computer science, you should pick one particular topic, say machine learning or cybersecurity, and then you should mold your SOP to that topic. You can't leave your SOP very general, and so say it's machine learning, you should attempt to like connect your experiences and your projects to why you want to do machine learning. And yeah, so the last few paragraphs would be your goals, and the last paragraph is usually how this program is relevant to your interests, and this should basically convince them that you're really interested in applying to this program, and you're not just applying to 20 other programs, and this is one of them. So yeah, this is one structure, and if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, just want to add a point, like from the perspective of PhD applications. I would say, like, since as long as you don't make any blunders, like you don't really write something that's completely wrong. Like, for example, like you can see the Kisses of Death link that I put. Your SOP doesn't really matter too much, because in some sense, a lot of people are going to be writing very similar things in some sense. So you just want to be as direct as possible. Tell the committee, like, this is what I'm interested in, but it's not ever going to be like a make or break factor. At least this has been my experience.
So I think if we go to the next slide, there's some specific advice for PhD application. Yeah, firstly, I would like to say I completely agree with Ameya on that, on the point that probably SOPs are not the make or break factor. I think I've talked to some professors and they kind of agree that LORs are the most important things, at least for PhD applications, and SOPs are of course important. I'll talk about some things which are things you have to keep in mind if you're applying for PhD. I think these apply to master's programs as well, but I would just like to highlight it. So at least when you're applying for a PhD, it should be like it's a very long-term thing. You'll be doing a PhD for around 5 years. So in your SOP, I think one important thing to clearly explain is why you're interested in doing your PhD in the area you picked, and also why you picked the specific university that you did. So like these things are like very important, and this shows that you have a clarity about what you want to do. Also, your SOP should be as much like it should really focus on the research you have done, and it should indicate that you have potential to do good research and be creative and things like that. These are quite important, and when the committee looks at your SOPs, I think this is probably what they look at. So what they might do is they might look at your SOP and then also read the LORs that have been written for you. And then what should not happen is like these should not contradict each other. So what you have written in your SOP should kind of match what you expect to be in the LORs. So yeah, you shouldn't try to exaggerate what you've done and things like that. And also one thing which is kind of important to do is mention like what faculty you would like to work with. So you should write like things which are very specific to the university you're applying to. This shows that you're very clear about what you want to do, and of course you might not know exactly who you want to work with, so you can mention like 2 or 3 names, and also it might be the case that the papers written by the faculty from that university has influenced what you've done during your research experience. So mentioning these things kind of tells them that you are taking the initiative and you have done your homework. So all of these things are like going to help you create a better SOP. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that people kind of do make a mistake on sometimes in their SOP, it's not really a mistake, but I think it doesn't help them, is to kind of put too many things, right? Like, I think in my SOP, I think one thing I did was I only wrote about projects and research that was very relevant to what I wanted to do in grad school. So in some sense, you want to be talking about your plans and how what you have done will help you achieve those plans. It doesn't really make sense to mention like, I've done 1,000 projects in this, when it's really just not relevant for what you're going to be doing in the future. Yeah, I think finding a way to tie in like what you've done to what you want to do is important. Like it really helps. It will also help you when you have interviews. I don't think we actually talk about this right in this slide, but I generally, like many of the top places will actually have interviews after you submit your application. Like they would probably interview 4 people for every slot, maybe sometimes even more, because now these days it's like virtual. Yeah, but I think maybe once you get there, like maybe we can share some advice on that. Yeah, still like a long time to get there.
Yeah, as Ameya said, you should not put a lot of things in your SOP. So you should not make your SOP the CV, and the CV is actually a separate part of your application, and whatever you want to put, you can put here and choose a few things that you think are relevant and put it in your SOP. So coming on to the CV. So this is a bit different from what you would be submitting for internships for like corporate work. So the CV should highlight more of your research and like less of like you wouldn't put a skill section here like you would do in your um, work CV. So the first thing is that your CPI would be here, and this matters. So generally there's no hard and fast rule, but if there's a candidate uh, who has a better CPI and better projects, they would favor that candidate. So this is a factor that they consider. But your CPI, if it's very low, you could substitute it with good projects, good research. Like if there's an LOR from a very good prof, that can substitute your low CPI. So like some general advice would be that if you're in your first year, you should focus on getting a high CPI, since that kind of sticks for 4 years. Like it usually varies within plus minus 10%. And if you're in your second year, you should focus on getting a good research intern. Most people won't be doing like corporate interns in second year. So if you wish to go for masters, second year is a good time for a research intern. Your third year can also be a research intern. I think Ameya did a research intern in his third year, but I went for a corporate intern. This is up to you, but yeah, in your third year, you should focus on whatever you're doing, your intern, and like do good work and ensure that you could get a good LOR or a good publication, whatever you're doing. So in your fourth year, you should focus on applications, like your tests and so on. So coming back to the CV, the second thing would be your research projects and internships. So you would usually have like one or two or three, and you like mention all of these, and your publications would be separate from this if you have any, and it helps in creating a strong application. But so it's not necessary that your final work is like published to a good journal or conference. You could also put in papers that you have put on arXiv, though I think it won't be that strong. And yeah, and also you could mention any publications that are under review. So it's not necessary that you have a paper published by the time you apply. So moving on to work experience. Um, I may not be that qualified to explain this. I think Shaurya and Ameya have more relevant experience. So your work experience may matter to some programs. It depends, and it would especially matter if it's something to do with research. So if you're like say a predoctoral researcher, it plays a pretty strong role in your application. And regarding like general SD work, it may help. It may help more if it's relevant to the program you're applying. So if you're applying to ML and you're working in an ML company, that would help a lot. And it also helps in terms of your LOR. You could have an LOR from your manager. Although regarding LORs, I don't know if this was mentioned, but for most programs, you need at least 2 academic LORs. Um, so yeah, so one LOR could be from like corporate, and this could be where it comes from. And yeah, next would be your achievement section. You could mention any competitions you have won or any prizes you have been awarded in this. And the last section would be your extracurriculars and social work. So some universities, they demand an extra statement called your personal statement or diversity statement. So in this, you basically have to mention any uh, social work you've done or anything you've done to improve lives of the minorities. Uh, this may not be a big part of your application, but some universities do ask this. Uh, yeah, and your extracurriculars could be anything that you do. Moving on to the next part, which is tests. I think Harsh will explain this.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the testing requirements. First, I'll talk about the GRE and then I'll move on to TOEFL. So when it comes to the GRE, there's 3 types of schools. So when you will shortlist schools, you'll find probably some in each category. So the first category is, the GRE, the ones where the GRE is a mandatory requirement. So for some schools, kind of require a GRE score to be sent to them. And for these schools, you will have to write a GRE and send them the score. The second requirement, like the second category is, the schools for which the GRE requirement is optional. And for many of them, you will see that it is recommended. So, of course, to improve your chances for getting in, it is a good thing that you write your GRE, get a good score, and send the score to them. But in case you have a bad score, it would be better to not send the scores to them, if it is optional. And the third category is the set of schools where GRE is not required and not accepted. So you can't even send the GRE scores to them even if you want to, right? And they will not consider it as a part of your application. So don't bother sending the scores to them. So it is like, of course, because there's schools in each category, we recommend that you write a GRE and try to get a good score. Because it does improve your chances of getting into some of the programs that you might be interested in. So let's talk about what a good score is. So the GRE is kind of broken down into 3 parts. We have a verbal section, a quant section. We have denoted the verbal by V, quant by Q, and an analytical writing section, which you can see as AWA. Generally, when we talk about the GRE score, we talk about the verbal plus quant score. And each of these sections is of 170 marks each. So the total score of the total maximum is 340. And the quant section, it tends to be very easy for people who are studying engineering in engineering programs. So you barely need to study for the quant section. You probably have to give a couple of tests, and if you're performing poorly in those tests, you might want to study. But generally, it is like even in your first attempt, you might score like 165 or 166 out of 170. And it is preferable that you can score like 170 or 168 or something. But the verbal section tends to be a challenge, and we'll talk about how to prepare for the verbal section later. It requires a large vocabulary and some, reasoning skills and stuff like that. And that is where you kind of have to put in some effort and put in some work to study for it. So here's the thing. A good score in GRE, is about 325. If you get a score of above 325, it will make you like at least, for many of the programs, like they won't just outright reject you and they might take you seriously. But below 325, many programs might not take you seriously at all. And a score of greater than 330 is actually good, and it might actually make you very competitive with other candidates. Now, it depends on how seriously each university takes the GRE score. And of course, it varies from university to university, and there's no like concrete the concrete set of universities that do it. It's just a very subjective thing. And on the analytical writing section, it's like a score out of 7. And a score of greater than or equal to 4 is good enough. But I think a score of greater than 3.5 might also, greater than or equal to 3.5 might also pass. But below that, it actually it doesn't look very good. So try to get a score of at least greater than or equal to 3.5. And analytical writing, as the name suggests, it's basically a writing. You have to write essays and stuff. Anyway, now let's talk about the TOEFL. TOEFL is basically like, since you are an international student, the thing is that if you are applying for US universities or European universities, the thing is that they want to make sure that the students that they are taking in are well versed with English. So that is what the TOEFL is for. It basically has 4 sections: a reading section, a writing section, a listening section, and a speaking section. And each of them is of 30 marks, and the total score is 120. Try to get a score of above 100 in TOEFL, and that is basically TOEFL is just a cutoff exam. They basically just check whether your score is above a cutoff or not. And generally that cutoff tends to be like 100, but for some universities it is lower, and for some it might be slightly higher. The thing is that 100 is a sweet spot, and you kind of have to score a TOEFL score of above 100 for most programs. So yeah, try to get a TOEFL score of greater than 100 marks, but it's not like they kind of compare the TOEFL scores of different students. It's just a kind of cutoff. There might be individual part cutoffs too. For example, they might require students with greater than like 23 in the speaking section, because they want students to be able to, communicate in English, without difficulty. So you might want to clear those cutoffs too, the individual part cutoffs. And then there's also one more aspect that might not be important now, but it would be important once you get into the university. For many universities, the thing is that for TA-ship, by the way, I think my screen is glitching. You can listen to me, right? All right. Okay. So for many universities, the thing is that if you want to apply for a TA-ship later on, the thing is that TAs kind of have to teach or discuss various topics with students, and they shouldn't have difficulty in communicating certain topics or discussing certain areas, certain concepts with students or bachelor students and so on. So many universities kind of require you to have a TOEFL score above a certain TOEFL speaking score above a certain cutoff to be qualified to become a TA, teaching assistant. So having a good TOEFL speaking score will help you with a TA-ship role afterwards. And also, like I think in Princeton kind of has this requirement that you should have a high TOEFL speaking score just for like getting in, because they kind of make every student who is applying a TA, make every student who gets in a TA. So I think there's also nuances like that, and you need to research that in the individual programs. Now let's move on to the preparation for the individual tests.
Yeah, coming on to preparation for GRE. So my first advice would be that you register for the test as soon as possible. Like if you're giving it a month after today, or 2 months after, you just register for it now. So the reason is that for me, it's at least more psychological. If when there's a deadline, you are forced to prepare for it. And if not, you'd usually put off preparation till your test date. So the other reason for this is that once you register in the ETS website, you get free mocks, like 2 free mocks. And these mocks are pretty important because they're like the actual representation of the tests. So GRE is conducted online. It's web-based. So these tests would be an exact replica of this, and it'll give a pretty good idea of your final score. Your final score would probably be like plus minus 5 of your mocks. And yeah, and the AWS section, which Harsh mentioned is like the analytical writing section. And the way they grade it is that they have a computer-based like AI system that grades and gives a score. And they also have a human grader, and it's an average of these scores. So the thing with mocks is that these will be graded by the computerized system, and you'll get a idea of how your writing is. So once you register and you have your two mocks, you could either give one mock like right now, and this will give an idea of how much you need to prepare. And based on this, you can vary the time you need to prepare. So there's no like hard and fast rule of how much you need to prepare for this, and it's dependent on you and how well like you're able to learn and how well your vocabulary is. So the most important part is the verbal section. The quant section is pretty easy, and it's likely you'll get like close to the full score. So the verbal section is the most important, and the way to get a good score in this is to have a good vocabulary. So it has various subsections like reading and stuff, and like in most of them, if you don't know the some some word in it, it's highly likely like the you won't be able to get the answer. So vocabulary is pretty important, and this is the main thing that we'll be preparing for while you're doing GRE prep. And uh, so ETS, which is they conduct GRE and TOEFL basically, and they have their own materials. They have like a set of books for verbal quant and like a practice book. And I feel like these are more than enough for like preparing. Uh, and this, along with your vocabulary prep, is more than enough to get a good score in GRE, like 325 or 330 plus. And so yeah, coming on to vocabulary, you need to learn words, and so there's a YouTube channel which me and a few others I think have done. It's called Greg Matt, and he has like a playlist of videos where it's like cherry-picked words which usually occur, like which usually come up in GRE tests. And if you learn these words, it's pretty enough. But you should also like, there's also a lot of websites which have vocabulary lists and so on. So you need to just download them and start learning. There's no like easy way to do this. You just need to like learn a few like more than like 600, 800 words. Again, this depends on like person to person. If your vocabulary is poor, you need to learn more words and stuff. So yeah, the way to evaluate this is like you could give a mock test, and the ETS materials also have like two paper-based mock tests. So these could also give a good idea of your score, and you could like modify your prep according to the score you get in this. So moving on to TOEFL prep. So yeah.
So basically for the TOEFL, the first thing, as Kousik said, is that you should register for it first so that you have that motivation, intrinsic motivation. The good thing about TOEFL is that it is easier, like pretty easier than GRE. So basically, the English and the vocabulary which comes in this is something which is kind of needed for, like, which we already kind of have. So like if you prepare for GRE, the vocabulary would be good enough, and like I can safely say that there will be like very less words in the TOEFL test which you would not able to get. So so the thing to be prepared for TOEFL is that, as like Harsh mentioned, that there are these four sections. So just like if we get the idea of the four sections, as in like the so in the four sections, the reading and writing is something which we as a foreign language speakers do more than listening and speaking. So reading and writing is something which like we have done, and so it is kind of easier. But this listening and speaking is something which though we do, but we do not kind of get tested on it. So this is something which I think takes a little bit practice. So there is this site which I've added here. So if you go there, like it has full practice test, and along with that it has section tests also, section practices also. So like reading and writing, you can do one practice, and you will get to know that okay, reading is like how we had the reading comprehensions when we were young in school, right? So will we have a comprehension and we'll get 10 questions out of it. Writing is we'll have to write a short essay on something. But listening and speaking is kind of like, in listening you'll hear out conversation, and then after that conversation you'll have to answer. So there can be things like adjusting to a computer speaking, the accent of the recordings, etc. And the speaking, in speaking, like there are questions wherein say you have a prompt which asks you to describe, or say to take an example, it can ask you that if you want to call your friends, would you prefer to call them at home or at restaurant? So it'll be you'll have this prompt and you'll be given 15 seconds to prepare. So in this 15 seconds you have to prepare what you'll say, and once that 15-second timer clock like goes, then there will be a 45-second timer which will start and you have to speak in the mic. So basically this listening and speaking things, because they are a little, we are not acclimatized to getting tested. So just practicing these from this side, just to, it would hardly take 2 days, one for listening and speaking, and I think TOEFL should be good. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Now we'll move on to the question answer session. Okay, if anyone has any questions, they can read them. They can put them in the chat. We also put across a form, right? So I'll be reading some of the responses, and the panelists can decide. Can answer them. Okay. So for the first question, okay, this is from someone who's graduated in 22. How to decide whether you want to do a PhD or not? If yes, should we go for a direct PhD or go to masters? What is an ideal work experience for each, and why does almost everyone go to the US? So it's kind of a big question.
Yeah, I think I can answer that.
Sure, go ahead.
I think you will know if you want to do a PhD or not. If you're having doubts, maybe doing a master's is probably a better investment. One thing is that many PhD programs in the US, they allow you to drop out after 2 years with the master's anyways, but I would not recommend going in with that because you're going to burn a lot of bridges in the university with your advisor, and it's going to be like a big mess. I mean, those kind of options are only meant for like people who like really do not want to continue, like something significantly has changed. Why do most people go to the US? I think it becomes, the thing is that many of the top universities are in the US, and it becomes kind of a network. So if you look at like many of these, like if you look at like, let's say Berkeley, like the kind of hiring that they do for the professors, many of them will come from places like Stanford, MIT, CMU, and so on. So all of these is like a kind of like a network, like, you know, how like IITs have like a network in India, all of these top universities have a network in the US. And it becomes very hard for somebody outside the system to kind of break in. That doesn't mean that you will necessarily have like a bad PhD experience, but I'm just thinking if you want to become a professor at a US university, doing a PhD from a US university is very essential. Like, I think it's very important. But if you want to go to Europe, I mean, there are like really good universities in Europe. Like, I was also considering EPFL for my PhD studies, and that has many strengths of its own. It kind of depends like where you want to end up eventually. If you want to end up eventually in the US, doing a degree in the US helps a lot. It helps with the visa as well. And if you want to end up in Europe, or if you want to work in Australia, anywhere you want to work on, like, I think studying there is probably a very big advantage. Just from like a CS perspective, I think the US has, you know, more jobs, more research going on. So it's many people prefer it for that reason. It's a better place to be.
Moving on to the next question. Does studying at an IIT help in getting a good university or a better job after an MS or a further studies program as well?
I would say it has some benefits, yeah. Especially like the advantage you'll be getting is through the alumni effect. So when the university you're applying to has alumni from IITG, they usually tend to continue picking students from IITG. For example, like CMU usually picks like 1 or 2 students every year from IITG. So so in that way, it kind of matters, like being from IIT. And in regards to your job, once you do a master's from some university there, like that would be a bigger qualification than your BTech from IIT. So after you do that, it probably doesn't matter much.
Right. Okay, this question's regarding the fees. The fees of some of the... Yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah, I have something to add to Kaushik's answer also. So basically, this is something regarding the master's thing, and obviously, all these things are not written down somewhere because universities just say that we do a holistic evaluation and they do not have an algorithm. But the point is that say if you are from an IIT or from a college where where the US colleges know that okay, this is kind of the best colleges, one of the best colleges in India. So if you take the CPIs also, so it is most likely the case that if you have a 9 CPI from an IIT or you have similar CPI in a smaller in a tier 2 college, etc., so that might break the tie at the same CPI level also, because they know that okay, getting a good CPI in a college wherein the competition is high, or you can say the students go. So one thing is that. Secondly, sometimes it happens, like what happens is, as it is the scenario that when we are creating an application, there is something which should stand. So I'm not saying that it should be just your college. Obviously, you have to have things apart from that also. But again, it is also one of the things which starts. Okay, he's an IT student, and now we start to evaluate. But again, I'm in no way implying that just getting into IIT or just having that IIT tag is the way to go. Like if you are in, say, a private college also and you have good papers, then obviously you will be the first pick anyway. So yeah.
All right, the next question is on the fees. The fees of some of the top ranked colleges, for example, CMU, is very high for any middle class family to afford directly. And education loan is something that I wish to avoid at all costs. I'm highly interested in masters, but considering the above, what should I do? Also, give some idea about masters in the Europe. Okay, yeah, if you guys would like to take that.
Yeah, fees is pretty high in almost all universities, and so I'm not sure why you don't want an education loan, but basically, if you're going to work after your master's, it makes a lot of sense for an education loan. The interest rates are not that high, and like you're most likely to get a job from a top university, and if you do that, it's pretty easy to repay the loan in a few years, like 2 years or 3 at max. So if you really want to do a master's, I just suggest you still go for it and you take an education loan. Otherwise, there's obviously a lot of funding opportunities in various programs. For example, Shaurya can explain about this. UIUC has a fully funded program, I think. So that is something you can look for. I think a few universities have this, like Cornell would have it, and also your TA-ship, RA-ship experience there would repay some part of it. And yeah, also you would have an internship in your summer, and doing a corporate internship would allow you to repay a significant portion of your loan. So yeah.
Yeah, so just to add to Kaushik's answer, like if you are really sure that okay, you do not want to take a loan, so there are master's programs which are funded, as in they kind of guarantee assistantships to everyone they admit to masters. But the point here is that there are pretty less colleges that guarantee the assistantships. But like say for UIUC, for example, they do not guarantee it. But like if you talk to alumni, you will get to know that okay, once you are admitted to the master's program, everybody gets it. So this is me saying that they do not write on paper that everybody will get it, but most of the many colleges like UIUC or say UT Austin also. So most of the students get the assistantships there, and once you get the assistantships, then pretty much like it is the funds and all are sorted. So what I would suggest is you can make a list of first list the colleges which are writing on paper that they guarantee assistantships. Then you can talk to alumni in different colleges and get to know the scenarios of the funding and like what is the ratio of students getting funded. So like for colleges like UIUC, UT, it is around 90-95% more. All of the students either get TAs or RAs, which effectively kind of reduces, exempts the whole fee, and like there is a stipend also. So it will sort the funding.
However, you would have to show that you have funding available for the visa, right? Like for the first, yeah.
Yeah, so this also depends. Basically, like if you are in a college wherein it is not guaranteed, So it depends on your profile whether you'll get the TA application before coming there or you have to go in there and apply. So if you are in the second case, then there is a slight issue because you haven't gotten that before going. But in most of the cases where they are sure that they want to give, they give it with the admission only. So then that amount is basically there in the I-20 thing, basically not including I-20 and all this. That amount is associated to you, so you can tell the visa guys that I have the assistantship, so you do not have to show anything. It was the case.
All right. The next question is, my major is not computer science. How do I proceed if I want to pursue further studies in CS?
So I can answer this. So these days, I mean, computer science, okay, it depends on what you want to do exactly, right? Like if you want to work in like theoretical CS and so on, that might be a bit harder. My suggestion is that you kind of leverage, you don't see it as a negative actually, you see it as a positive, like you're coming in with like, interdisciplinary experience. In fact, these days, like computer science is like being used almost everywhere, right? Like you look at like biology, chemistry, physics, chemical engineering, material science, and a lot of these departments I know are, hiring PhD students exclusively like to work on such interdisciplinary projects. That is one way in which you can actually leverage, you are coming in like maybe like if you have a physics major, you understand a lot of the underlying physics that, computer science majors are not exposed to. In fact, as part of my PhD, I am going to be studying physics for like the first few semesters. Like I need to catch up. And so instead you can kind of look at this as a positive, saying, I have this experience already. I already know these things. And, maybe like then you need to kind of show the other side, like you need to show that, you can program, you can do like CS research as well. And these are the many ways to show that, right? You can do research internships, you can do like projects, you can have like open source contributions. Yeah, I think there are many avenues. Like you should not see it as a negative, is how I would put it.
Okay. Is going for further studies abroad a good idea for someone who eventually wants to come back to India? How did you decide when you want to go to MS, like either immediately after graduation or maybe after getting maybe some industrial experience of sorts?
I have something on the first part of the question. So basically, like if you recollect what the pros of masters we discussed, getting a job in US was just one part of it. So basically, say you want to come to India, but then also it can be the case like say you are working as a software developer, now you want to aim for research roles. Say you want to be a professor or something. So basically, the point is masters is just like it is useful if you want to settle there, but it is just not that it is used only for that reason. So you can obviously get it to kind of switch from SD jobs to research jobs, get further knowledge on it, and same goes for PhD. So basically, like I don't think it is just that if you want to settle in India, then you should not get it. If you want to, you should. And like I think second part was when to decide. So basically this is something which comes from inside. So like some guy, like when you try, so basically my suggestion to everyone would be to try research, like get a research intern and all, because by that, see what happens is we do tend to go to SD interns because it is the norm, and like there are many interns being provided here, so we do not kind of give us a chance to explore the research part of it also. So say you have done a SD intern and you have also done a research intern, then you will be in a better place to kind of judge that, okay, this was SD, this was research, so what suits me, like how am I built, what interests me, what are my aspirations, etc. So all of these things combined can take time. So that's why many people have this go to masters after job experience. So yeah, it is not a norm that you have to go after, like just after graduating. Like if you have made your mind, it's very good. If not, then you can take your time also. It's fine.
Yeah, I want to add on to this, like very good points by Shaurya. So one thing is that it is much harder to do research when you are not a student, right? I feel like there are many SD opportunities once you graduate, but very few research opportunities. And I think when you're in university, for example, you are eligible for internships. Like you cannot do internships if you're not a student. I think for that reason, I think it is quite like if you want to do a PhD or you want to get research experience, it's always like very highly recommend that you do it when you're still a student in university. Yeah, that for that reason I actually did internships in first, second, third, and fourth years, like all research internships. So like I kind of knew like outside once you graduate, like these things become much harder. And also the question about moving outside India, I think it is much harder to do the transfer, like go from India, start in India, then move to the US, than to kind of come back, right? Like if you have a US degree, it is much easier to move back to India than to go the other way. So it's just like kind of maximizing kind of your future options in some sense, like you have more flexibility. And a US degree is actually very well regarded like all over the world, like even in Europe. So it's not like you are limiting your choices. Yeah.
Adding on to that, regarding the second part of the question, that how do you decide if you want to go directly or after a year or two? So basically what I feel is that you need to evaluate if the work you're going to do is relevant to your profile, if it's going to help in any way in your application, and basically the reason why you're working for 2 years. If it's financial, it's good. But if you think it's going to improve your application, you need to like carefully evaluate that. And the way I did it was like I also was confused regarding this, and what I did was like I applied to a few ambitious universities like right after graduation, and my plan was basically that I have a safety net, and if I want to work, I can work and just see how the process goes. But yeah, but do note that the process, like the application process, is very intensive. So y- applying 2 times is like a big deal. So you need to see what's best for you.
A question regarding CPI, like how much does CPI actually matter, and is there a certain threshold of sorts?
I think I'll take that question. So my understanding of the whole issue is that I think CPI matters, at least for PhD programs, it does matter. But that even if you do have a low CPI, you can compensate for it by showing that you have interest in the area that you're working in, that you have done a lot of research, and that you have potential to do research. One important point, especially for PhD, like I think it applies to masters, is that I think doing research is very different from just being able to do well in courses. So, so I think that is something very important to keep in mind, and which is something I learned during my research experience. So yeah, I mean, if you can show that you can do research, I think the CPI part won't matter much if you have, as long as you don't have a very low CPI.
Yeah, I would actually even add on to this. Like, I know some people who have like really low CPIs because they just did not enjoy what they were studying at all, but they had like really exceptional research profiles and they got admitted to like let's say 8 of the top 10 programs in the US. So yeah, don't think of it as like, I mean, you need something to compensate. As I was saying, like you cannot, you need one really strong part of your application in some sense. But that should ideally be like your research experience and your LORs. Like those are the two most important factors for any admission in PhD programs.
One question in the chat. How important is undergrad research experience for a research-based MS, and how can little to no, just a BTP research experience be compensated for applications?
I can take this. So if your MS is research based, I'm not sure. I think it plays a big role. But yeah, usually like programs, like my program has a like 1:2 ratio of people who go for a PhD after the MS and who go for a job. And so it's not, it is relevant, it matters. Like you should have at least like 2 projects, ideally a BTP and one more project that you do with some prof. But you don't need like 3 4 good research projects. Like you don't need to maybe do a research intern in your third year if you don't want to. And yeah, so And the most important factor would be that you have enough LORs. So you need 3 LORs and 2 of them have to be academic for most programs. And so that implies like you at least have 2 research projects. You could give 2 LORs from the same project like your BTP, but it's preferable that like that because both of them would be writing same points. So it's preferable that you have like 2 at least 2 research projects.
Okay. One question regarding research. So, like it was mentioned that you could publish your research in journals, conferences, etc. So, does it really matter which conference you publish your research in, or whether you publish in a journal or a conference? Or also, like to adding to that, does it matter how many papers do you have, or is one really good paper enough or better than having more papers?
I can answer this. So, the quality of your publications matters much more than the quantity. Like I know people who had like 10 publications in some random places and they were like, it just did not work out well for them. The reason is that, the kind of research that goes on in these places is like really of really high quality, and you want to be able to show that you can do research of that high quality, right? Whether it's journal or conference, I mean, like I think in CS people generally publish in conferences more, but they also tend to be a little bit more noisier, like in terms of reviewing. So I don't think it matters too much. Like as long as your recommenders can say that this is like one of the top places for like research, like admissions committee might not know every single journal or every single conference. So yeah, LORs can give good perspective as to the strength of the publication and the quality of your research experience. Like what are they? So yeah, it's always focus on quality more than quantity. I will like that's I think a mistake that many undergrads do. Like we need to get as many papers as possible. But it is definitely possible that you kind of botch up your own chances by just focusing more on quantity. I think that's a big mistake.
To add on, like from the perspective of MS, so I feel like publications are not that important. Like I know a lot of people who like get in good colleges without publications, but like as people have mentioned, you need one point that stands out in your application. For example, I had one publication and that was like not relevant to the program I was applying to, and it was also from a pretty like bad conference. So they usually don't like objectively evaluate your publications and how many you have or how good they are, at least from MS perspective. Yeah, more important would be the project itself and the LOR that your like mentor writes about it. So yeah.
Just to add to Kaushik's point, I 100% agree. Like for the master's applications and like for research-based masters also, like for research-based masters, it is sometimes like important for the applications, but in general for masters, it is the research potential which you are kind of able to tell them that, okay, tell the universities that, okay, you have the potential. And for that potential bit, LORs play a huge role. So basically, I do not have any publications. What I did was I was kind of I was not sure whether I had to go for masters or not. So that time, what I felt was the best for me to like did my BTP seriously, and apart from that, in the electives, in electives usually what happens is the students are less. So basically, at that time, you can talk to the professors on what they are working with, help them with that, and so got to 1 or 2 research projects using through the electives. So once I had the electives and I had done PTP sincerely, so I had these 2-3 profs who knew that, okay, I had the research potential in me, so they wrote the LORs for me, and I think that worked. And also because, as I said, I was not sure whether I had to go for masters or not. So, and I knew that I am not working on publishing and researching that bit, so I was also kind of working on my CPI. So, like to conclude, I would just like to say that there is this N things which they evaluate, and it is an holistic evaluation. So like if you know that you are lacking somewhere, you can make up with like 2-3 other things, and that should be.
All right. One question: if one does not make it to the top 10 to 25 schools, is it worth it to do a masters abroad, or is it better to continue in India itself?
Uh, Kind of depends on why you're doing a master's. So like going back to the 4 or 5 points that you would do a master's for, if you're doing it for like knowledge or profile building, uh, it kind of doesn't matter that much. Like you should not be comparing universities there to like Indian universities. Like even below the top 10, 25 schools, the profs are still pretty good and knowledgeable. So so that should not be a factor. And the third reason was like US job market. And in this case also, it doesn't matter. Once you go for a master's, like uh, the job market is pretty like identical. There would be some bias towards top universities, like, but still, like even in India, like people from private colleges still get comparable jobs. So again, this is not a factor. And yeah, similarly, the other reasons as well shouldn't impact you that much. Uh, yeah, finally, it's up to you. If you really want to do a master's from top universities only, you can like wait and reapply again, maybe build your profile more, do more research projects, get experience, and then apply again. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, there are some
Please go
universities
on.
that not so highly ranked, but they have some really good, employment outcomes. Like I know, like San Jose State, it's not really a university that is like top by any means, but they have, because they're so close to like Silicon Valley, like a lot of employers like Google, Facebook, Nvidia, and all of these companies hire a lot from SGSU, like San Jose State University, just because it's like so close and they have like they tend to produce good graduates, like no matter what.
All right. One last question from the doc. After that, if you have any questions that I might not have addressed because there were a lot of questions in the doc, you can actually raise your hand and I'll give you a chance to unmute yourself. Uh, so the question is regarding the LORs, do they need to be from a CS prof if you're pursuing a master's in CS, maybe?
So I actually did not take a single LOR from a professor at IITG. I took two two recommendations from my mentors at Google Research and one recommendation from my summer internship professor, my summer internship mentor. Uh, I think you don't actually need to take an academic reference. Like even though like on some websites they'll be like, oh, we want one academic reference. They're actually not so strict about it. Like they don't actually care. What I think you should do is probably get recommendations from people who have already done the degree that you're applying for. So, like, suppose you're applying for a PhD, it is very, very strongly recommended that all of your advisors have a PhD, because they understand like what it means to do a PhD, right? And they can give like some honest feedback. Similarly for like masters also.
All right. If anyone has any remaining questions, they can raise their hand and I'll give them mic access. Otherwise, we can wrap up this great talk. Yeah, cool. 1 second. All right. I've unmuted your mic. You can go ahead with your question. Preetham, I think I've given you mic access. Okay. Go on, please.
Am I audible now? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Then afterwards, I went for master's in fluid mechanics. So there I did some courses in fluid mechanics, and in one course, I particularly got very interested in. But the thing is that now I want to do PhD, but I don't have any relevant experience in that field. So I have been applying for PhDs for last few months, but everywhere like they are fine with my profile, the way I present and everything is fine, but they are like, you lack the experience and we are scared to take the opportunity, the chance with you. So, do you have any suggestions? What can I do? I have applied for internships in India, but didn't get any good response from any profs actually. I applied in multiple labs, in like relevant labs, from where I thought I can get some experience through a internship, then I can go for the PhD. But I didn't get any like internship opportunity from the profs in India.
This is like a bit unfortunate. Like part of like the system that we have is that like in India especially, I think like research opportunities are like very hard to get. For this reason, I would say like maybe like applying for a master's and then applying later for a PhD might be like a better option for you, because when you're doing a master's, you will have many more opportunities to do research. Like you're already part of the system. Professors will.
No, I have done a master's. I have done a master's. Yeah, I have done a master's. But
in the US is what I'm saying. Like because the kind of opportunities that you will get in the US are very like much more than what you would get here. And people are fine with applying again for a master's as long as you are you're motivated about what you want to do and why you're doing the master's.
So you are telling to apply for a master's that is relevant to this course for which I want to go for a PhD in future.
Yes, because getting a PhD without research experience is extremely hard. Like it is almost impossible. I've never heard of it happening without, unless you are like graduating with very strong LORs. Like it's almost impossible. And
I have good LORs and everything. It's just that I lack that experience in that relevant field, and professors don't want to take the risk, because they have to teach me during the PhD.
Yeah, when I say good LORs, I mean from people who are doing the same thing that you want to do in your PhD. If it's one thing to have good LORs, but it's also helps to be very specific. Like in some sense, like suppose there's a professor doing exactly what you want to do. If you get an LOR from him saying that this person can do this, then that is very different from getting a LOR from somebody who doesn't know what you want to do. For that reason, I would say like it's a very common path for Indian students, like to do a master's, do research in the master's, and then continue on for a PhD. Just for this reason, it's just much easier to do research in a university setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think like financially also it should work out. Like as Kousik mentioned, like you can even work for a few years after your master's. You can also do internships during the summer, which help a lot with like funding. You can earn quite a bit of money during those.
Yeah, I did an internship after my master's, but during that time also I was trying to get into this field. But the thing that this field is a little bit connected to biology, but as a mechanical engineer, I don't have relevant experience in biology, and they are like, sorry, we can't give you the opportunity. So during my master's thesis, which was like an internship, I tried to get an internship at that time, but it didn't happen. But now I'm like, if I compromise again for PhD, I'm not gonna get a postdoc in this field, and like I can never get into this field ever. Like this PhD can be the only opportunity for me to get into this field for my whole career. Like
that reason, I would say like doing a master's and trying to get some research. Once you're like, if I am admitted to like the CS department, there's nothing preventing me from doing research in the physics department, for example. Like nobody really cares. So that is one, like probably the easiest way out for you. Like once you're in, you can kind of figure out your way. You will have access to many more opportunities.
Okay. Then we better to look for another master's in this field.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, in Oxford and stuff, they actually have like 1 year masters. Like that could also be of some interest. Like in the UK, people tend to do 1 year masters, so that could also be like cheaper, and like you can also get good experience there. I think Oxford is also very strong for like Oxford and Cambridge are very strong for like biology, so you might even find somebody you want to work with. So,
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Seeing as though there are no more people with questions, I want to thank the panel for spending a lot of their time in setting up this talk and actually solving a major problem that everyone faces during their BTech. It's been a great talk. Thank you all. I'm sure everyone learned something great today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.